The one that's presented to us is not history. It's all lies.
Well, it's not all lies.
All of it.
There's some lies.
I found that too.
Lost civilization in Grand Canyon was, wait, Egyptian?
The Grand Canyon is one of the most significant landmarks in the United States and the world at large. However, nothing prepares the world for what Joe Rogan brings to the table. We are talking about intriguing new evidence that suggests ancient Egyptians might have actually inhabited the Grand Canyon long before the arrival of Americans. According to some, this shocking discovery had been kept hidden by the Smithsonian Institute alongside the government for over 100 years. But Joe Rogan breaks the silence. What's more, he opens the floor to a mysterious guest, Hotep Jesus, who brings in electrifying evidence.
Lost civilization in Grand Canyon was, wait, Egyptian?
Did the Egyptians ever live in the Grand Canyon? What are the historical and cultural significance of their explorations of the region? Keep watching to find out. The Grand Canyon is one of the few natural monuments in the world, engraved inside out with numerous secrets. This is probably why researchers and archaeologists constantly study the site to discover new things. So far, their constant studies have yielded promising results, with mind-blowing discoveries made in the process. These groundbreaking discoveries include the earliest vertebrate life forms in the Grand Canyon spanning millions of years. We will discuss it later, but it gets more interesting as Joe Rogan enters the mystery pool with great insight into a well-hidden secret in the canyon. This time, he is not alone as he brings on the Joe Rogan Experience show Hotep Jesus, an even more exciting figure who doles out shocking evidence of this secret, the presence of ancient Egyptians in the Grand Canyon. This discovery changes a lot, ranging from our historical knowledge of the Grand Canyon to what we know about the most revered ancient Egyptians who were the builders of the Great Pyramids. Of course, the discovery of the ancient Egyptians' presence in the Grand Canyon is a mystery that requires an explanation, as there is no connection between the Grand Canyon and the current location of Egypt today. Instead, an expanse of about 12,000 kilometers separates both areas, with the Atlantic Ocean covering most of this expanse. So here's the question: how did Egyptians find their way to the Grand Canyon in the first place? The answer is an entire story that starts from the beginning, so let's dive in. But first, what do you even know about the Grand Canyon? Here we are talking about the mind-blowing rock formations carved through time by the Colorado River, which is located in Arizona, United States. Up front, the massive size of this natural wonder will sweep you off your feet, being about 1,904 square miles, which is way bigger than Rhode Island. But the size of the Grand Canyon is not the only exciting thing to note about the site. Here, another thing that all who come across the Grand Canyon agree upon is that it is an iconic site that all should see. This notion was particularly pushed by Teddy Roosevelt, a former president of the United States, who confessed his feeling of awe when he visited the site. According to him, the Grand Canyon is unparalleled worldwide and should be preserved as it is. Following his recommendation, the Grand Canyon was soon declared a national park on February 26, 1919, and if that wasn't enough, it soon became a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an international dark sky park. But as it turns out, Teddy Roosevelt might not have been the only one who saw the Grand Canyon as awe-inspiring. This feeling of wonder might have gone way back to the time of the ancient Egyptians. You will agree that the ancient Egyptians are known for their advanced civilization and incredible taste in architectural structures, so it wouldn't be too surprising that they may have also picked interest in the Grand Canyon of all sites. However, the prospect of the Egyptians once dwelling in the Grand Canyon goes against conventional history and has therefore been highly debated and suppressed over time. Hence, there is a need for evidence. But this is where Joe Rogan, the famous podcaster and daring truth seeker, comes in. Recently, on the Joe Rogan Experience show, he brought on board Hotep Jesus, an African-American media personality, performance artist, marketer, and author known for his take on conspiracy theories, history, and social issues. Now, this man claims to have evidence of the presence of Egyptians in the Grand Canyon, which will change everything. But what are they? Let's talk about the evidence. Hotep seems to have about Egyptians in the Grand Canyon and the missing pages of the history. On February 23, 2023, the Joe Rogan Experience show took everyone on a roller coaster ride with Hotep Jesus, speaking confidently about the presence of the ancient Egyptians in the Grand Canyon. Here, he referred to the Smithsonian findings of Egyptian activity in the canyon, taking us to a well-hidden cave known as Kincaid's Cave in the Grand Canyon, which is said to be named after a man known as G.E. Kincaid. G.E. Kincaid is said to be the Grand Canyon's second explorer and a leading pioneer in the many discoveries recovered from it. Here, the first explorer of the Grand Canyon is John Wesley Powell, an archaeologist with one arm from the Department of Interior and a director of the Bureau of Ethnology at the Smithsonian Institute. Though Powell was the first to traverse the Green River route and explore the Grand Canyon, Kincaid seems to have propounded more daring discoveries that have changed everything. According to the Smithsonian paper, Kincaid had traveled through rough conditions, navigating the Colorado River from the Green River. He was accompanied by geologist S.A. Jordan, alongside a team from the Smithsonian Institute, all setting out to investigate the Grand Canyon. According to the paper, they ended up stumbling into a cave with an entrance said to be about 1,486 feet down the sheer canyon wall, which is also marked by strange staircases. Interestingly, the cave's entrance is located on government land in the Grand Canyon, where no visitors are allowed in without the penalty of trespass. But what did Kincaid find in the cave? Now, the cave is said to have a network of tunnels and rooms which, in summation, appear to be an ancient Egyptian tunnel city that could contain up to 50,000 people. The presence of the Egyptians here was clear in the cave, judging from all that was discovered. In the cave were pyramids with hieroglyphics alongside other relics, including a shrine dedicated to Smenkhkati. Smenkhkati was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who ruled briefly in the early Second Intermediate period during the 17th dynasty. Also found in the cave was a sarcophagus alongside a rock-cut fold with statues. Another Egyptian relic found in the cave includes a pure gold artifact of King Cayenne with lotus flowers, indigenous to Egypt, in both hands. It was neatly sitting in the cave's first cross-tunnel, known to be the same location of shrines in the Valley of Kings in tunnel cities built before the advent of pyramids and the above-ground cities. Cayenne is said to be a descendant of King Zaphnet of Egypt, who may be Joseph in the Bible. In the tunnel was also found a golden tablet, discovered to be a history book detailing names and other information from King Zaphnet's arrival in Aslan to information about Cayenne's arrival in the Grand Canyon. The historical artifacts currently displayed in the Smithsonian Institute from this expenditure include the pure gold from Kincaid's cave and the Egyptian urns from Powell's cave, making us wonder why so much is still hidden. Indeed, the discovery of the Egyptian presence in the Grand Canyon does not seem to have been smiled upon by the authorities, as they seem to have done their best to keep it a secret. We say this because the area where this discovery is said to have been made has been highly restricted by the authorities for almost a century. Here, the sky and airspace of the region are also highly restricted, with the only possible access to it highly dangerous to navigate. Many have lost their lives in the bid to investigate, and worst still, all information about Kincaid's finding seems to have been nullified or retracted from all records, leaving people to only speculate about the event. However, Hotep Jesus seems to provide other connections to the truth which will wow you. He points to the fact that Grand Canyon monuments are all named after Egyptian pharaohs, posing the possibility of the site being a former Egyptian complex. Interestingly, he also states how the Grand Canyon aligns with the same stars of the pyramids, including the constellations of Orion and Pleiades. But there is more. Hotep Jesus further shows evidence that sandblasting is abundant in the Grand Canyon. This is serious evidence, judging from how important sandblasting was to the Egyptians, who could only move massive slabs for the pyramids through them. Before the discovery of the sandblast method, the question of how the pyramids were built with such heavy stones had been a big puzzle. This puzzle remained until a study titled Sliding Friction of Wet and Dry Sand was published in the journal Physical Review Letters in 2014, thus providing us with answers. The study takes root from a wall painting in Jehuti Hotep's tomb, which shows a person standing in front of a wooden sled and wetting the sand, showing how heavy objects were transported in ancient Egypt. Detlev Bon, a physics professor at the University of Amsterdam, conducted the study. Here, he built a smaller version of an Egyptian sled in a tray of sand with weights between 100 g and a few kilograms. In the transportation experiment, Detlev explained that when sand is dry, it forms a sand heap in front of the steep slope during translation and thus hampers the sled's movement, requiring a high force to reach a steady state. However, when water is applied, it stiffens the sand, and the heap disappears, requiring a lower applied force to move the sled as water helps it reach a steady state. Detlev Bon says the trick is using as little water as possible, as the sled's movement would be hampered if the sand is too wet or dry. Thus, using sandblast alongside adding water to the sand reduces the manpower needed to glide the massive pyramid stones around, and could cut the number of workers to half. Detlev Bon carried out this experiment precisely to determine why water was applied to sand in ancient Egypt, as it had been thought to be a ritual requirement before this study. However, this Egyptian tool known as sandblast in the Grand Canyon speaks volumes, according to Hotep Jesus. This, alongside his other evidence, though debated by conventional historians, might just mean that Africans may have traversed the American continent alongside, or even long before the Native Americans did. We will leave you to think about this. But how about other shocking discoveries in the Grand Canyon? We should know by now that the Grand Canyon is a highly mysterious site with numerous secrets unfolding by the minute. We wouldn't expect less from a place where over 1,000 mysterious caves are assembled, with only about 335 of them ever documented. This region also has a tale that covers billions of years, so you might wonder what other discoveries scientists must have made. Here, another amazing discovery in the Grand Canyon is the surprisingly old, 300 million years old evidence of the earliest known vertebrate presence in the Grand Canyon. Indeed, finding footprints on the site isn't new, as the region preserves them in thousands. However, nothing like this has been seen before. It was discovered by a professor of geology from Norway at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Known as Alan Krill, he found the oldest vertebrate fossil track ever seen in the Grand Canyon National Park, dating back to about 313 million years ago. But how was it discovered in the first place? It started with Alan Krill discovering a boulder marked with these strange footprints while he walked with his students in the region. Amazed by this finding, he sent the photo of the boulder to his colleague, Stephen Rowland, a paleontologist. Stephen was astounded by the discovery, and they detailed it in a paper later published in the journal PLOS 1. According to Rowland, no other vertebrate tracks in the Grand Canyon are as old as this one. This is even though the Grand Canyon is known for numerous fossil tracks. The footprints were exposed when a cliff collapsed from the canyon, but the boulder was not noticed until Alan Krill and his students found it and brought it to the attention of geologists. Upon close study, the footprints were found to belong to not just one animal, but different animals walking past at different times. Apart from the fact that this was the oldest footprint discovered in the Grand Canyon, the discovery was also educated in other ways, as it helped geologists understand how ancient animals walked, revealing a distinct gait of their movement in a lateral sequence. Here, a lateral sequence is a type of gait in which the footfalls of the hind limbs and forelimbs are on the same side of the body. This means that the left hind limb and left forelimb touch the ground simultaneously, followed by the right hind limb and right forelimb. Currently, species of tetrapod animals such as dogs and cats use this form of movement when they work slowly. However, scientists now understand that this movement style goes way back to early times and was also used by vertebrate animals hundreds of millions of years before us to the Grand Canyon. Now, if you think this time frame is long, then get ready because the next groundbreaking discovery goes even way back in time. But what is it? Well, it turns out that a recent shocking discovery in the Grand Canyon has thrown scientists into wonder once again, which has to do with a gap in history. As you may already know, the Grand Canyon's layers of rock formations not only contribute to its 6,093 feet height, but are also a time machine detailing the ages of the Earth's evolution through its hard rocks. Here is what we mean. The rock formations of the Grand Canyon have been painstakingly formed over time, and some of these rocks formed during different times include the rocks from the Cambrian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, and Permian periods. The accurate detailing of the rocks from these periods, alongside their beautiful arrangements, is a feature of the canyon that has astounded all since it was discovered. But in this detail, there is also a mystery, as a recent discovery has been made by scientists revealing that a gap exists within the canyon's rock formation that speaks of an unknown occurrence in the past. Scientists have labeled this discovery as the Great Unconformity exposed in many places throughout the Grand Canyon. However, it is most visible in the western part of the canyon from the south rim to the Colorado River. The Great Unconformity is a gap between the Tapeats sandstone, about 500 million years old, and the underlying Vishnu basement rocks, about 1.7 billion years old. The Tapeats sandstone is a relatively thin layer of sandstone that was deposited in a shallow sea. The Vishnu basement rocks are much older and more complex, and they include a variety of metamorphic and igneous rocks. The Great Unconformity represents about 1.2 billion years when there was no sediment deposition in the Grand Canyon area. This period was likely marked by erosion and uplift, which removed the older rocks and exposed the Vishnu basement rocks. The cause of the erosion and uplift is not fully understood, but a combination of factors, such as tectonic activity, climate change, and sea level, may have caused it. Since its discovery, scientists have carefully studied this phenomenon, as it is a significant gap in the geologic record of the Grand Canyon. And this time, gap is too long to be explained by gaps in the rock record, so it is thought to be due to erosion or non-deposition. Now let's talk about what science reveals about the future of the Grand Canyon, which you likely don't know. Now, no matter how ancient the Grand Canyon might be, the fact remains that it has not always been there. Currently, the age of the Grand Canyon remains seriously debated, and mysterious as it is, no one knows how old it is. Initially, scientists thought that the Grand Canyon had been carved out by the Colorado River about 6 million years ago, but this has been refuted recently. According to a study in 2012, evidence recently discovered in the Grand Canyon shows that its formation goes way back to about 70 million years ago. Here, it is more shocking that the formation uses materials of rocks that date back to billions of years ago. The beautiful thing about all of this is how time has shaped the canyon into what it is today, and no matter how well we try to preserve it, scientists reveal that even more awe-inspiring experiences await us in the future. So, what does the future Grand Canyon hold? If we are ever convinced about anything, the continuity of time will constantly play a major role in shaping the Grand Canyon's future. We say this because scientists have recently discovered that the Grand Canyon is not static, but rather ever-changing and evolving. According to scientists, the evolution of the Grand Canyon is quite slow to the naked eye, but it is definitely happening, and the future will gladly tell. What this means is that though we cannot tell exactly what the Grand Canyon will look like in the future, scientists are certain that the shape of the Grand Canyon is ever-changing and will evolve into something that might be even more awe-inspiring in the future. Here, we must take note of the fact that just as the Grand Canyon has been able to detail time past in its rock formations, it just might be doing the same thing for generations to come who would be able to observe our times from the Grand Canyon, which will look different by then. Thanks for watching. Check out the video you see on your screen right now. It's unbelievable.